What's going on, peeps? Mastermind here, and today we are going to be discussing the PlayStation 4 Project Neo. It is the upgrade coming to the PS4. There's a lot of information regarding that just came out a couple of days ago, and I wanted to kind of give my opinion on the whole situation and actually defend Sony's decision to go ahead and do this. Now, before I get into all of that, the gameplay you're looking at here is none other than Super Castlevania 4. The reason why is because I had nothing else pretty much to do that day, so I recorded some footage of me just messing around in the game, and also because the game is the shit. It's a classic, one of the best ever, so if you haven't played it, definitely check it out. Anyway, moving on. So recently there's been some confirmation about Sony upgrading the PlayStation 4. Now, I don't want to get into all of that news and all of that whole bit. What I want to specifically talk about in this video is why I think it's necessary and why I feel like this is the time for this sort of thing to happen. Now, let's be honest. A lot of PC gamers and a lot of people for the last couple of years have been saying that consoles are dying, consoles are dead, and that the PC is going to eventually take over. And I've been kind of debating this back and forth for a long time. You're constantly hearing people say that this is the last cycle of console gaming, and the truth of the matter is console gaming actually runs the industry. Now, I'm not talking about mobile device gaming and tablets and things like that. I think that's actually a separate market. It's not something that's replaced console gaming or AAA titles. It's just a new market that has become quite popular. But as far as AAA titles are concerned in those sort of games, the market is still really strong for them, even to the point where I believe consoles still run it, because if you really look at PC sales as far as games compared to console games, when you're looking at AAA titles, console games still outsell the PC, and the PC has a much larger user base. Not to mention, a lot of developers kind of half-ass games on the PC. They optimize it and make sure that these games run as best as they can on the Xbox One and PS4, and then they kind of just add and turn on certain effects on the PC. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case for every single game, but you know, there have been some lazy games ported to the PC or put on the PC. Good example would be a lot of the games Warner Brothers has put out. But anyway, that aside, I still think there's a huge market for the PC and a huge market for console gamings. But here we have the PlayStation 4 Neo. And there's been rumors a couple of months back where Microsoft was even going to upgrade their system. That may still be in the works. You know how these things kind of work. They're going to deny until either something really concrete leaks, or until they decide to announce something, or until their competitor announces something, which is what's just happened with Sony. So why do I think that this is a good idea? I know a lot of people are like, well, this is a really bad idea. Some of the developers are complaining and saying that, you know, it's going to be kind of a pain in the neck for them to do this. And I really don't understand that, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, developers make a whole lot of money on consoles, on the PlayStation. They make a whole lot of money developing their games on these systems. So what? They're gonna have to spend a little bit more time, a little bit more money to, you know, develop certain games. It's not really that big of a deal. It's a really minor complaint. It's probably more of a nuisance than anything. And if we're talking about smaller indie developers that have a much tighter budget and aren't able to kind of do those kind of things, that's also not much of a problem, because let's be honest, most indie games run the same from one platform to the next. I mean, it's not really where you take a game with really kind of basic graphics and it's going to be that much better on PC, or that much better even comparing it to the 360 to the PS4 or something like that. Indie games, smaller games usually are not affected by this sort of thing. So now that we got that out the way, now the concern is, okay, this is going to split the market, and I don't think it's going to split the market at all. Take this into consideration. If you look at iPhones, all the different kind of Androids, PCs, Macs, tablets, even our vehicles, even cars, they all have upgrades, and they do it quite often, at least annually for most of them. So why can't we do the same thing for consoles? When you consider that consoles are still the cheapest option to go for the AAA gaming experience, I say, why not? This will not split the market unless they start making games exclusively for the upgraded console, the PlayStation 4 Neo, in this particular instance. And it's already somewhat been confirmed that that's not something that they're going to do. What's going to happen is that we're going to get games, and there's going to be graphic options to those games that are going to only be available for people who have the PlayStation 4.5 or Neo or the upgraded system. But the game is still going to run pretty much the same. It's just going to have higher detail, better resolution, possibly better frame rate. It's not going to It's not going to turn Uncharted 4 into a 4K game. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. The reason why, the upgrade isn't that significant. Is it going to be as powerful as like a GTX 970? No. Is it going to make your current PlayStation 4 obsolete? No. But is this the future of console gaming? I believe it is. Now, of course, the speculation out there, and it's probably the main reason why this whole thing is happening, is for the VR. Now, I know that VR is a very small market. It's not going to be anything that's going to take over the industry anytime soon. There's a lot of interest in it, and a lot of people are probably initially going to be really intrigued by it, but it is not going to be something that everyone has to have at launch. What's going to happen is pretty much a handful of people are going to buy these things. There's going to have a lot of reviews. They're going to have it on display in different places. And if developers continue to support it and some good games come out for it, and it becomes something that more and more people are interested in because of the content that they release for it, that's when we'll start seeing it become more of a mainstream thing. But right now, and for the next few years, I think it's just going to be a handful of people. It may even be a fad because, let's face it, if developers aren't able to really create compelling software for all of these VR devices, then it will be a fad and we'll just kind of see it disappear, just like many other things in gaming history. So let's just say these VR devices turn out to be a fad and nobody really cares about them and they end up just going away. I still think upgrading consoles is going to be the wave of the future. Just like I said earlier in the video, everything gets upgrades. Everything from our tablets, our phones, our cars. Why not consoles? If you have a console that comes out for $350, $400, and then in a year, 2 years, you get to maybe upgrade that, maybe even trade in your system, so you're not spending a new $400. Maybe it's just $100 or $150, and now your games, you're playing them at a higher resolution, a better frame rate, maybe a few added effects here and there, and you do this every other year. Why not? I think that would be much better than having to shell out for a console every 5 to 6 years and waiting for your console to be pushed to the absolute max but still not producing what we're seeing on PC. Why not go this route? I think this is kind of the way to go. I think it's a slight inconvenience to those who don't have the money and don't want to upgrade, but as long as they're still able to play the same games coming out and it's relatively the same, I don't see too many negatives behind this. So when you take all these PC gamers over the last few years that they constantly upgrade their PC or upgrade their PC every, so often, and they have the best possible graphics that they can have on any particular game, and if that model has worked for the PC enough to where it's convinced a lot of people in the gaming industry that PCs are eventually going to take over consoles, if that model has been successful and has been working for PCs, why can't it work for consoles? That's why I never thought consoles were dead or were dying. I've always felt and always believe and still believe that consoles were going to eventually get these upgrades. Keep in mind, this isn't anything new. Sega tried this with the 32X and Sega CD, and there have been numerous times where developers have tried to, in some way, to improve their graphics. Even the Super Nintendo they did the Super FX chip or whatever, and it was added hardware that they had put into their software. But even stuff like that, you always knew that the mindset was going to always be, how can we upgrade our consoles? How can we make these things better without having to create entirely new boxes? And I think this is the way to do it. Now, of course, there is that possibility that Sony can really screw this whole thing up and this whole thing can be a huge disaster. If they don't market this thing correctly, and it's going to be difficult to market this, trust me, that's not going to be an easy task. If they don't market this correctly, if they don't have the developers really back them on this, if only a handful of games actually have the graphic upgrade options, or if it's dramatically different than the PS4 and it causes current PS4 owners to get upset, then a lot of this stuff could be toxic for Sony and even Microsoft if they chose to go this route as well. So there's always those possibilities, but I do think eventually gamers and consumers in general are going to embrace this, because this is what we see as far as trending is concerned with iPhones and Androids and tablets and PCs and everything else. And I know a lot of people, including myself, feel like companies are milking us to death with releasing these new hardware incrementally, and it's just slightly better and charging us an arm and a leg for it. Of course, I agree with that, but as consumers, until we stop purchasing and making these purchases and needing to go out and buy these new upgraded phones that aren't much better than the ones we currently have, until we stop doing that, the message that we're sending them is that this is what we want. And let's be real, with video games, it makes more sense and it's a much bigger deal, because we want games to look better, and we need the technology to be better to be able to play more advanced games, and with better AI, better graphics, better frame rate. So in gaming, it makes a lot more sense than, let's say, it does for even driving a car, getting a new car, or upgrading your phone that pretty much does everything your last phone did other than a couple of other features. It really makes more sense in gaming. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. If you got something to say, leave a comment down below. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks once again for watching. Mastermind out.
Until that time, raw rhymes undercover, underground, Danny Glover undiscovered in my town, but they all lasting, y'all, overcasting, y'all, cloudy days making